I guess it's difficult to be optimistic about our current reality, but whenever you feel like it's like it's hopeless, I think you can just look at how young people are trying to create like a better reality for everyone. And so yeah, I guess my main message is to be able to work hand in hand with young people in our fight against climate change, and that hopefully by working with them we would have a better reality for everyone.
Welcome to Breaking Silos Collective, the show where we inform you how to break silos and why it actually matters. My name is Doris Carini. I'm the co host of today's show, and I'm also the Europe ambassador of the East West Center Experiential Professional Development Program. Today on the show, we have Mr. Ferth Manaysay, and he is a fellow of the Innovation for Sustainable Development Program of the East West Center. We are interviewing 15 fellows, and they're usually under the age of 40, experts in the fields of disaster resilience management, climate change, arts, education, health. Mr. Ferth's project or initiative is called the Climate Reality Project Philippines, Project Niche, and the goal is to run community-based capacity building initiatives for Filipino youth on climate change. A little bit more about Ferth. He is the engagement officer at the Climate Reality Project Philippines, and he is also serving as the vice chairperson and sectoral representative of the young people from disaster-stricken areas at the United Nations Youth Advisory Board. Ferth has spent most of his career working in policy advocacy, designing and spearheading projects, research, establishing partnerships on a wide range of projects such as disaster risk reduction, peace building, environmental action, and youth engagement. He has also worked with a lot of academic institutions and non-governmental institutions. Some to mention are the Disaster Map Foundation, Asia Foundation, and Ateneo School of Government. Ferth earned his Master's of Arts degree in International Relations from Waseda University, and I'm really excited to learn more about his project now and like to hand it over to you, Ferth. Thank you for being on the show.
Thanks for having me here, Doris. Nice to meet you finally.
Yes. Would you like to share with us a little bit how you got involved in the Climate Reality Project?
Sure. I just joined the Philippine branch last May, so it was I joined very recently. So the Climate Reality Project, it's a non-profit organization. So it was founded by former U.S. Vice President Al Gore in 2006, and the organization is really dedicated to catalyze a global solution to the climate crisis. So we train and mobilize people to be powerful climate activists, and we refer to them as climate reality leaders. So
Mhm.
we try to empower these climate reality leaders with the skills, campaigns, and resources that they would need to push for aggressive climate action and high level policies that would accelerate the transition of different sectors into a low carbon economy. So in the Philippines, I would like to say that we have a very like our strength is really in our community, and also the robust network of our climate reality leaders. So right now we have almost 1,200 climate reality leaders. So they come from diverse backgrounds and also from a lot of industries. So we have climate reality leaders who are in the highest echelons of government, and then there are also those who are working in the private sector or civil society organizations, and there are also those who work for grassroots and community levels through their own organizations.
Great. And when you say community-based, how does that translate into your overall region or country of the Philippines? Do you work all over the Philippines, or do you focus on certain communities only?
Yeah, our climate reality leaders are scattered all over the Philippines. So usually we try to categorize them based on their regions. So we have like at least like in the structure of our organization, we have coordinators for Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao, which are like the three like the biggest island groups in the Philippines. So a lot of them, as what I mentioned, they have initiatives that they are doing for their own communities. And what we do as in the Climate Reality Project is that we try to support them, to provide them with spaces and resources to improve or capacitate them in terms of their engagements with their communities, especially when it comes to climate action.
Okay. That's a good overview. I'd like to ask some questions that your cohort fellows shared. For example, Christina, also from the Philippines, she asked if you could share with us what were some of those community-based proposals that you funded, and
Mm.
how are these usually implemented, monitored, and evaluated after all? Do you have
Yeah,
examples?
sure. Yeah. Perhaps before I answer this question, I'll first give a background about
Mhm.
niche. So this was actually spearheaded by our youth cluster. So we have a cluster system in the Climate Reality Project Philippines, and one of the most active clusters actually is the youth cluster. So they are composed of obviously not young people, age 15 to 30 years old, and they partnered with um, a youth environmental group called Wayfarers. So they organized Niche Fora 2021. It was a 2 day forum where young people got to explore like the different roles or niche,
Mhm.
so to speak, that they could play within the environmental and the climate movement. So basically, it started as a one-off forum, and then it grew into a full-blown campaign, which really aims to help budding young climate advocates to find and in the tagline eventually claim their place in the climate space. So the fora, it really aimed to highlight the multidisciplinary nature of climate change efforts and be able to give space for young climate advocates to interact with sectoral experts and
Mhm.
experience youth climate advocates and show how collaboration is really important to ensure climate action. So when it started, the first forum was on what's called experts forum. So
Mhm.
this is where sectoral experts based from agriculture, from waste, industry, transport, and energy sectors. These are sectors of the nationally determined contributions or the NDCs of the Philippines. And so we invited those to share how their sectors are helping to solve the climate crisis. And another forum that was born out of it was the youth forum, where there were young climate advocates who were invited to share about their stories and their climate stories. I mean their journey in the climate advocacy, and also
Mhm.
provide like the challenges or insights, or they all were also provided insights on how they navigated through their journey as a climate advocate. And so those two forums, as a call to action, the project niche was launched on the last day of that forum. So um, it was really intended to be an opportunity for the participants of those two fora to transform the learning that they got from the niche fora to into concrete climate action. So I guess this is where the partnership with the East West Center came into picture. So the timing was really great. I mean, when the fellowship started, we were the youth cluster was sort of wrapping up the those two fora, and so um, it was great that this partnership took place at the right time. So the project niche focuses on helping young climate advocates to claim their space, and then by providing an opportunity by providing them an opportunity to implement local climate action. So when Project Niche was introduced, there were like I think there were around over 22 proposals
Mhm.
on community-based actions that were submitted. So it was really intended to creatively solve local climate and environmental problems. And we opened it to cater to different sectors. So we have different categories like for agriculture, waste, industry, transport, energy, and youth empowerment.
Mhm.
But in terms of the projects that were submitted during the niche, some of the examples of the projects that we had were, for example, we had a project on called Project Green Hydra. So it was a project that was aimed to address the problem of availability of clean urban spaces,
Mhm.
and also like in terms of the air quality and the solid waste. So a lot of these projects are intersectional. So, for example, that project it uses hydroponics to address those three problems by integrating a portable and cost-effective prototype using plastic bottles and water hyacinths. And then another project, interesting project that we're going to fund is called um, Plan Synergy. So
Mhm.
it intends to utilize solar power as an alternative way of activating the pump wells to provide a sustainable and long-term water irrigation system for local farmers. And then we also had a project called Fleeter Collector. So it's a stationary floating litter trash collector that was designed for flowing water bodies. So like for example, river or creeks. So
Mhm.
it has like an arm that traps and leads solid waste into a removable trash cage that can easily be lifted for emptying when full. And then also we had a project called Alpas. So it's an efficient waste management system which really aims to create a healthy and orderly environment inside and outside condominium in Metro Manila. So and then another project that we're going to support is called Climate Learning Kit. So it's a K to 12 curriculum that aims to gamify learning kit that would teach Filipino high school students about climate change education in a local context, and that would be supplemented with in-depth learning booklets. So the projects are really like it's interestingly it's a wide range of issues, and they cover different strategies to resolve community-based environmental and climate change related problems. So and in terms of how we're going to implement and monitor and evaluate those projects, so what would happen is like after they receive the grant to implement the projects, they will also have access to workshops and mentorship
Mhm.
program within the Climate Reality Project to help them with their implementation. Um, so the winners would be provided additional guidance and support. So we have Klima Pandayan, we call them Klima Pandayan sessions, or like our climate workshops,
Mhm.
climate advocacy workshops. So we will be providing them with workshops on to build their skills on implementation, and also provide them with new approaches and tools on how to become effective climate advocate. And in terms of the mentoring program, we provide usually it's geared towards climate reality leaders, but in this case, we will also be providing them with an opportunity to personally learn from the experiences of senior climate reality leaders, so that they would be able to push through and be able to implement the initiatives that they propose as part of Project Niche.
Great. So, for you're saying that there is already a lot of climate reality leaders, as you call them, or that youth cluster. How many people are in it? What's the number?
Yeah. Yeah, right now there are 1,200 climate reality leaders in the Philippines. Worldwide, I think there are like more than 30,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's an upcoming climate reality leadership core training. So it's going to be a virtual free training where they would be able to train be trained by Vice President Al Gore and his team of climate thought leaders. So it's also one of the opportunities that we offered to the winners of Project Niche. So um, the goal is really to try and hopefully to be able to integrate them within the organization. So we have different pathways of engagement where we try to engage our climate reality leaders, and hopefully we would be able to really support them in terms of the implement, not only in terms of the implementation of their projects, but also in terms of how they could be effective climate advocates.
Mm-hmm. And for those who got the grant, for example, the river trash collection project or some of the others you mentioned, you said they also get trainings and mentoring and materials to help continue doing their work. That was also one question by Tricia, also from the Philippines. She
Mm-mm.
was wondering if you plan on making those learning and training materials available for everyone online, or is this exclusively just for your climate reality leaders or your grantees of the project niche?
Yeah, I guess the short answer is no. So we will not be releasing those materials, and the reason is that our organization operates in such a way that we really prioritize and mobilize action through our existing climate reality leaders. But however, as I mentioned, our goal, even for those who did not get the grant, we have invited them to apply for the to participate in the climate leadership core training. So as I mentioned, it's a free training
Mhm.
with U.S. Vice President Al Gore and his team of thought leaders, activists, and scientists. And in that training, the participants, both the winners and non-winners, they would be able to get a deeper understanding of how our climate is changing, like the basics of climate change, and
Mhm.
also how looking at how the climate crisis is for example, deepening social injustice in our part of the world, in the global south, and what sort of challenges and practical solutions we have at our disposals. So I think ultimately it would also help them to be able to network with people from all walks of life and backgrounds. So like in terms of the type of people that come into our training, it's really it's really a wide range of participants. So like there are community leaders who would fight fossil fuel pollution, or like there are just parents who are concerned about the future of their children. And
Mhm.
but you can also see seasoned activists who would just like to expand their skill set, or business leaders or government leaders who want to embrace real sustainability. So yeah.
Mhm. And are you trying to get the project niche also more localized with initiatives that are more contextualized to rural communities in the Philippines? Like you were saying, your country is pretty large and there are different communities with different needs. Are there
Yeah.
any plans to bring that down to the communities?
Yeah, Project Niche was open to all high school and college
Mhm.
students in the Philippines. So by design, it's not intended to be like a local program. It's more, I would say, it's more like a national
Mhm.
initiative. So in that sense, there are no plans to like localize it to suit the specific context of local communities in the Philippines. However,
Mhm.
if you look at the initiatives that will be implemented, a lot of them are really community based, and they target specific localities. So when we were co-developing or the proposals, we emphasize how important it is to be as specific as possible in terms of the initiatives that they would
Mm-hmm.
implement. So like I gave examples, for example, about a community hydroponic garden project that would look into waste and urban agriculture, and also like looking at how there's a floating apparatus that will eradicate solid waste related river pollution in a specific river in that
Mm-hmm.
locality, or how a solar powered irrigation system would help local farmers to address food, water, and energy problems. So I think in that sense, it's not locally, it's not going the program itself will not be contextualized locally, but it's very much locally embedded in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that the projects are implemented at the community level.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
I would think that is what the Climate Reality Project by Al Gore is trying to achieve, right? There's a global understanding of climate change and what we all need to do, but then it really depends on each community how to contribute. Um, so I understand that the project niche is also, like you said, nationwide, but then very much the grantees are trying to solve localized problems and issues.
Right.
Okay, and how do you actually target the right audience? You said you're working with high schools, but
Mm-mm.
how do you reach the right audience of young people? That's also a question that Tinley from Bhutan, one of your co-fellows, was curious about.
Yeah. Well, it's as I mentioned, we really try to mobilize people within our own network. So
Mhm,
we have over 500 youth climate reality leaders in the Philippines, and so I guess through them, when we opened Project Niche to high school and college students, so we try to work within our own network,
mhm,
like cluster the youth cluster coordinators kind of like rolled it out to our existing climate reality leaders, who then try to look for high school or college students who might be a good fit for the program. So we
mhm,
didn't really have a very strict guidelines in terms of who we selected as participants. So as
mhm,
long as you're like a high school or college student, you'll be a qualified
mhm,
participant. And because the goal of Project Niche is really to provide an opportunity for young people who may not be experienced, or I mean, usually high school or college students may not be as well, like they do not yet have the experience in terms of being advocates for the environment or climate change. So the goal of the project niche is really to provide them with the space and the skills that they would need in order to develop or like implement a campaign that would address a local climate related issue.
when you mentioned you started the project niche right around 2020
No, it started just this year.
this
So
year, okay.
yeah, just this
So
year.
how did that all work out with the pandemic and you had very strict lockdowns in the Philippines? Was that helpful or was that the reason why you
I
still need to move forward digitally? Just
yeah,
tell us
I,
a little bit about that. Yeah.
yeah. A lot of our engagement activities have been migrated digitally. At least when I came into the Climate Reality Project, a lot of our initiatives are already digital. I mean, like virtual are being done virtually. So, in the case of Project Niche, it was done fully virtually. Like it was done virtually. Like all of the activities were done virtually. In a sense, I wouldn't say it was helpful that it was done virtually, but I guess during the pandemic, it helped a lot for us to be able to reach more people than we wouldn't have been able to, because like I mean, if it was done physically, we might be confined with just specific locations, like
Mhm,
we would not be able to reach, for example, youth from Visayas and Mindanao, those um, areas that it's just physically not possible to invite participants, mainly because of logistical reasons, but because we're doing it virtually, we were able to reach youth even from from the provinces, from
Mhm.
the rural communities, and it's great to be able to hear like even those projects that didn't win, it was great for us to have at least like a perspective or a sense of like what sort of local climate or environmental problems they are facing, because in the climate reality project we also try to seek regional balance in terms of our
Mhm.
initiatives. So at least it sort of gave us a sense of how we could also strategize in the future as an organization on how we would be able to balance out the different initiatives that we are doing throughout the country.
And what would you say were the biggest learnings for you and your team after running such a digital initiative during a pandemic? What do you think worked really well, and where do you feel like you could improve to continue doing the work you're doing?
Yeah, I think like I guess the most important aspect of this project is really having the right partners and stakeholders. So in our case, I guess for the case of Project Niche, since within the climate reality project we already have a network of organizations and climate reality leaders that we could tap, like to serve as resource persons or as mentors. So I guess it would help for this kind of initiative to already have that kind of support system. So even if it's being done virtually, it was really helpful that we have the right network to work with in order to be able to implement the initiatives that we were able to pursue.
So working with the right people and really tapping into the stakeholder network helped you
Right.
spread out. Nice. Let's take a couple more questions from your co-fellows. Marina from Brazil, she was curious, after the conclusion of the first Project Niche competition, does the Climate Reality Project Philippines intend to use this method as a continuous means for the selection of new members and young leaders?
Yeah, that's a great point. It's not necessarily a recruitment tool, but I guess you can think of it as a great way for us to engage externally. So I mean, like based on like what I've been saying, I guess you would get a sense that the organization it really prioritize internal activities with the climate reality leaders, but we also do engage externally. We work with government organizations. We work with civil society leaders, for example, in terms of how we're campaigning against single-use plastics, or how we're promoting sustainable urban mobility through biking, or through developing a comprehensive study on energy transition. So we work a lot with different sectors. So, but
Mhm.
just to answer the question, we do intend to it's a great project. Niche was a great way to at least be able to engage with youth organizations, or with students and youth groups. And for us in the climate reality project, we have like in order to ensure that we are effectively engaging our climate reality leaders in the country, we establish a cluster system. So
Mhm.
that was patterned after the strategic priorities of the Philippine National Climate Change Action Plan. So as what I mentioned, the youth cluster is one of those clusters. So it's the only cluster that's really based on age. Like the other
Mhm.
clusters are more thematic. So like it could be about food security, human security, water sufficiency, and then we also have a cluster on sustainable energy and mobility. And then on ecological and environmental stability, among others. So we have those clusters so that our climate reality leaders and those who would be joining us as newly trained climate reality leaders would be able to choose or organize or implement initiatives based on their interest, on their
Mhm.
advocacy. And I guess in the branch, in the Philippine branch, we try to recognize the role of young people and how they play in tackling the climate crisis. And so we try to engage them in terms of how they could advance the climate change agenda of the country. And yeah, and I guess Project Niche was really one of the ways we were able to engage with young people on how they could address the impacts of the climate crisis, at least
Mhm.
within their own communities.
And do you have like comparison numbers or other projects, for example, from the Climate Reality Project in other countries, like neighboring countries? Do you usually try to see what's going on in other neighboring countries? How can we possibly
Mm.
collaborate? Or where is the Philippines chapter standing with your project niche compared to other projects that are going on? Do you feel like
Yeah,
you're ahead or you're
I'm not sure if they have Project Niche in other branches, but we do work. So what we usually do is we work collaboratively but independently
Mhm,
with the other branches.
mhm,
So for example, in our part of the world, in Southeast Asia, we do work a lot with the Climate Reality Indonesia, because
mhm,
I guess because of how not just geographical location, but in terms of the realities
yeah.
that we face in terms of climate change and disasters. So we do collaborate with them a lot. And our youth cluster, actually, they've implemented like a number of initiatives already with the Climate Reality Indonesia. So like they did a parallel initiative on like a donation drive for agroforestry tree planting
Mhm,
that occurred in both countries. And in terms of how we're working with other branches, the initiatives that we do have are like we work on common thematic areas, but the way we implement our projects are kind of different from each other, because we also have to consider the local context in our own country. So yeah, that's how we operate within the organization.
nice. And Ferth, can you share a little bit how does the wider community who's maybe not involved as a community leader or not super active in climate change, how do they react to your projects and how do they actually learn about it? Maybe that's the first question. How do you inform the wider population about what you're doing?
Mm-mm. All right. So right now, since it's been, because of the pandemic, a lot of, as I mentioned, a lot of our engagements are being done virtually. So
Mhm,
we have initiatives like in terms of increasing the visibility of our climate reality leaders and their initiatives. We engage in both new and traditional media. So
mhm,
like we have institutionalized, for example, like monthly features where our climate reality leaders would share their expertise, their knowledge, and support. And we try to support them and advance their advocacy work, whether it's on in renewable energy or on sustainable urban mobility or other development approaches in pursuit of genuine and lasting climate resilience in the country. So, for example, we have lead on climate #lead on climate, where our climate reality leaders, we try to ask them to continuously do acts of leadership and lag them regularly in our reality hub. So reality hub is like it's an internal platform where our climate reality leaders log on their acts of
mhm,
leadership, like their the climate action that they do on their own.
mhm,
And we also have reality talk. It's a long form feature where our climate reality discuss the climate crisis and various available solutions in depth. So I guess in that sense, each of the unique climate stories do not only fuel and empower both our individual and collective advocacies of the climate reality leaders, but also like try to enlighten the wider public of
Mhm.
the realities of the climate crisis. And then we also have Kwentong Klima, climate stories in English.
Mhm.
It's a video feature where we share in-depth climate stories and journeys of our climate reality leaders and their various climate action initiatives. And interestingly, I think for us, art is also something that sparks our interest and passion. So whether it's a visual work or a literary piece, so we provide we call it climartivism. So we also provide for our climate reality leaders to who are virtual or literary or performance artists to share their inspiring climate related creations.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and then in terms of like how we also provide space for honest and timely climate conversations, we also have a weekly column for a newspaper, one of the biggest newspapers in the Philippines. It's called 11th Hour. So
Mhm.
we just try to remind our readers that our actions to address climate change and environmental degradation must be bolder and faster moving forward. And internally, we also have like different pathways of engagement, which is really which is really designed for our climate reality leaders. But at the same time, the end goal is to capacitate our climate reality leaders to be able to implement initiatives within their own communities. So for example, we have Klima Totohanan. In English, it's climate reality. Actually,
Mhm.
it's a fortnightly webcast where we discuss real and urgent stories and actions on the growing climate issues of our society. And then we have Klima Eskwela. It's climate school.
Mhm.
It translates to climate school in English. It's a climate education project where we help climate reality leaders deepen and broaden their understanding of climate science, policy, and governance through online courses. And then Klima Pandayan, where the project niche participants would be joining. These are workshops where we equip our leaders with new skills, approaches, and tools to be more effective climate advocates. So yeah, we have I guess in that sense we do have a lot of engagement activities, both not just within climate reality project, but also in terms of how we're working with the wider public.
Yeah, that sounds like a really sophisticated kind of plan that you and your team have established to try to reach as many people as possible with different means. Do you have any feedback that the population gives to you? Maybe those who joined the project on the one hand, but maybe also those who didn't but know what you're doing. Do you get positive feedback, or are they oftentimes still a little bit
Mm.
curious what's really going on? Or what is the response to what you're doing?
Yeah, usually like in terms of how we're doing our initiatives, we would usually have like feedback forms being
Mhm.
rolled out after our initiative. So, for example, whenever we do our Klima Totohanan webcast, we ask people to sign up for a feedback form, and I guess the response have been mostly positive because there are a lot of issues that aren't really talk about as much as they should be talked about. So, for example, when we look at how we're advocating for the phase out of single-use plastics in the
Mhm.
country, usually the conversation would be about it's a waste management issue. But
Mhm.
for us in climate reality, we also try to provide an alternative lens that would be
Mhm.
really focus on climate. I mean, in terms of how plastics are energy intensive. It's an energy intensive industry. So like,
Mhm.
in terms of how fossil fuel are being used to produce plastics, in terms of how you're transporting, in terms of how you're producing them, it's something that would really emit a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So we try to provide like an alternative lens in those issues, that it's not just a waste management issue, but it's also public health and also a climate change issue. And also, one of the interesting initiatives that we've had is called Mobility Awards.
Mhm.
So the Philippine branch, we also work with organizations and local governments in promoting sustainable urban mobility through the Mobility Awards. So it's the first platform in the country where we give recognition to acts of leadership by local governments and workplaces and commercial establishment that would encourage biking, cycling, walking, and other sustainable mobility options for their constituencies or for their customers or employees. So I guess in those kinds of initiatives, we are able to highlight the real stories of people on the ground. So in those kinds of initiatives, at least we are able to highlight stories that are not usually highlighted, I guess, in traditional media, or it's not something that you would readily see on TV. So our goal is, I guess, to also be able to highlight stories that are usually invisible.
Mhm. So give them a platform to be shown and to be made public.
Yeah.
Um, Firth, what's the plan for next year or the years to come? How will you, with Project Niche and overall the Climate Reality Project, how will you continue your
Mm-mm.
work? Are there any exciting stories to share yet, or is it still?
Yeah, I guess for the project niche, we do intend, hopefully the youth cluster would be able to carry it forward in like as one of their flagship programs, because like just
Mhm,
given the response that we've gotten, and also like the sophistication of the projects that we've received, it's really interesting how innovative young people could be. So in terms of project niche, it's really something that we hope to pursue in the coming years. For the climate reality project, the most immediate next step is really to be able to recruit more climate reality leaders in the country. So as I mentioned, we have an upcoming
mhm.
global training. So hopefully by the end of October, we would have more climate reality leaders who would be joining us in rallying and mobilizing climate action in the country. And um, and I guess it's interesting how just going back um, to to Project Niche. It's interesting how we always say that young people are how do you say this? Um, it's interesting how like we are so used to the idea that the youth are our leaders of tomorrow, but I
Mhm,
think in the Project Niche we also try to recognize how they are already leaders of today. So
mhm.
I guess for the Climate Reality Project Philippines, what we intend to do is we hope to provide more spaces and resources, not only in preparation for the future, but also in terms of what young people could do today. So our goal is really to further support our youth cluster on how they could continuously convene dialogues with other youth leaders, or how they could discuss strategies or innovative methodologies and new perspectives on how they could address the impacts of the climate crisis.
Are there any other initiatives that you'd like to highlight that we should know about, or any other projects that your youth leaders have come up with, but they were maybe not awarded or they didn't get the grant? Is there anything where
Mm.
you see like they don't just give up, but they continue their work even though they were not selected as a winner? Can you share any stories in that field with us? It was one question also Marina had. She was curious
Yeah.
if the projects did not get the grant, right? Do you see them continue, or do they just try
I
to,
I guess
yeah.
that's why we like even after the competition, like if there are proposals that were not able to to get the grant, but
Mhm.
we encourage them to be part of the Climate Reality Project Philippines. So incidentally, like right after the at least like a few weeks after the competition, the registration for the Climate Reality Leadership Core training opened. So it's been open for the past like 4 weeks, I guess, like for the past few weeks. And we did encourage them to participate and to
Mhm.
register, because climate reality leadership core training is really one of the concrete way where we can equip them, with the necessary skills and guidance they would need, not just to formulate the project, but to implement other initiatives within our branch. Because as what I mentioned, a lot of our initiatives are really geared towards climate reality leaders. So in
Mhm.
order for them to have access to those initiatives, they first have to undergo like I would probably call it like a preparatory
Yeah.
training for them to be it's like an accelerator,
Yeah.
to help them become climate advocates. So yeah, in response to that question, our plan is, I mean, we really encourage them to register for the climate reality leadership core training, and hopefully from there they would be able to engage with the with the different activities that we're doing within the Climate Reality Project Philippines.
Nice. For we like to ask all our interviewees here on the show, what does breaking silos mean to you personally?
All right. I guess just going back to what we do in Climate Reality Project Philippines. Breaking silos mean that we should be more collaborative, and also think of ways where we could think of areas of partnerships and intersections where we could pursue our initiatives. So as what I mentioned, in the Climate Reality Project, we're really lucky, not really lucky, but we're grateful that our climate reality leaders come from diverse backgrounds and sectors, and in that sense, we are able to work not just with government organizations, but also with private sector, civil society organizations, and grassroots community levels, and that has been really for us in the Climate Reality Project, that has been really helpful in terms of how we're trying to get our message across. So, yeah, breaking silos means to be able to work collaboratively with different sector. That's what it means for us in the
Mhm.
Climate Reality Project.
Thank you. Ferth, are there any final advice you'd like to give others who'd like to get started either with the Climate Reality Project or with any other sustainability initiatives in their communities? Any advice how to get started?
I guess for now, because of I mean the one of the recent reports of the intergovernmental panel on climate change just came out, and then because of that, I guess it's very difficult for people to be optimistic about
Mhm.
the current situation. I mean, there are young people who have seen and experienced the impacts of climate change, and they I guess a lot of young people right now feel anxious about the just the enormity of the climate
Mhm.
crisis. But I guess it's important for them to be courageous and step up and take upon them, the challenge of on how we can resolve the climate crisis. And it truly starts within our own communities, with our families, our friends, just being able, for example, to provide information about climate change to your peers, to your friends, to your networks. It's already a big act of leadership that you can do, and it's very difficult to I guess it's difficult to be optimistic about our current reality, but um, whenever you feel like it's like it's hopeless, I think you can just look at how young people are trying to create like a better reality for everyone. And so So yeah, I guess my parting message for this episode is to be able to work hand in hand with young people in our fight, um, in our fight against climate change, and that hopefully by working with them we would have a better reality for everyone.
Thank you for your insights and this very meaningful message. It's very inspiring to see how much work you're doing, and I wish you good luck for your future project niche and the Climate Reality Project in the Philippines. I also thank our listeners and viewers for watching. If you're interested in more insights about the work Ferth is doing, we have the link and more information provided in the description box below. Also, feel free to share this episode with your friends and your network. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more interviews coming up. Thank you from me and from Ferth. Thank you for being on the show today, and we hope to see you all soon again. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.